Video. 1 Corinthians 9, verse number 24. It says, Know ye not that they which run in a race run all, but one receiveth the prize? So run, that ye may obtain. And every man that striveth for the mastery is temperate in all things. Now they do it to obtain a corruptible crown, but we an incorruptible. I therefore so run, not as uncertainly, so fight I, not as one that beateth the air, but I keep under my body, and bring it unto subjection, lest that by any means, when I have preached to others, I myself should be a castaway. So we see here in this passage of scripture that it talks about that if you're going to try and win something, if you're going to try and win any type of competition, you have to be temperate. What temperance means is self-control. Self-control. You know, it's probably one of the number one things in our society today that is a problem is a lack of self-control, right? That's the biggest thing. People cannot contain themselves. They spend too much money. They eat too much food. They don't do anything to be in subjection, put their body in subjection, right? That's one of the number one problems that we have in our society today. People not having self-control. And they did a study, and they took kindergartners, and they gave them an option. And we're going to see it in this video right here. You guys ready up there? Maybe not. While they're getting that to load, I'll tell you the results afterwards. They found that the kids that had self-control in this video lived later in life. They did this experiment, and then 20 years later, they found out where the kids had been. And all those kids were in a completely different situation than the kids that did the opposite. And so we'll see what happened, maybe. I threw a monkey wrench at these guys this morning, so gotta give them, keep them on their toes up there. If not, I'll just. That's right. They're supposed to know what they're doing up there. Supposed to. The problem is that Steve was one of the one marshmallow kids. So. While they're doing that, Proverbs chapter number 3. Proverbs 3. You ready? All right, hold your place there and we'll watch this video. Put it on the live stream too, Dennis.
Okay, sit in that chair. All right, here's the deal. Marshmallow for you. You can either wait, and I'll give you another one if you wait, or you can eat it now. When I come back, I'll give you another one, so then you'll have two. But stay in here and stay in the chair till I come back, okay? All right. I'm gonna go do something and then I'll come back.
It smells yummy. It smells really good.
So it's up to you. You can have it now or you can wait. Okay? I'll be back. Stay in the chair, okay? Okay. All right, so I'm gonna leave and then I'll come back, okay? So you can either eat it right now or you can wait. Either way, okay? Okay. How'd you do? Did you do good? You did? Yeah. You wanted to eat it, didn't you? Yeah. So did I tell you to give you another one? Okay, now you can have both. You need them.
All right, what I didn't tell you is that first kid was me. No, I'm just kidding. How many of you guys would have ate the marshmallow right away? Raise your hand. Yeah, I knew Belushi. I was going to call him a liar if he didn't raise his hand. So, oh, Andrew. So only our two ushers in the back. Everyone else is lying to me right now, right? They did this study and they found that these same kids, now it was a different group of kids than these ones here, but the first ones that they did this with, they checked on them 20 years later and they found that the kids that ate that first marshmallow were either addicted to drugs, homeless, or in very, very low, low paying position, a low role where they weren't making any money and they were all in debt, all of them. So it's an interesting character study, and they started training differently in elementary school because of this test that was done. I think it was done by Columbia University. But that one test changed changed how they were wired to say, hey, this is either you can hold on and wait. And the kids that could wait, they were so much more successful in life. They were less in debt, less everything. So self-control, what we're talking about today, temperance, is such an important characteristic that we all need to maintain. And it's something we all struggle with in one way or another. So you may have really good self-control and not be able to eat that marshmallow. Maybe you don't even like marshmallows, so it wasn't even a big deal. But you might have something else that you cannot wait for, right? You know, some of us, we have to have the latest and greatest technology all the time. You know, I can tell you for years I was like that. Now it helped that it was free for me all the time, so it made it easy, right? But I was always doing that. They don't do it for free anymore, so I've had this same phone for how long now, Dennis? Like 2 years? 3 years, yeah, I think it's 3 years. But I never would wait 3 years to get a new phone before. Like, it just wouldn't happen because it was free, and I wanted a new one. I always wanted more and more and more. That lack of self-control is a problem. Here in Proverbs 3, if you look with me, verse number 21, it says, "My son, let not them depart from thine eyes. Keep sound wisdom and discretion. So shall thy life be unto thy soul, and grace to thy neck. Then shalt thou walk in the way safely, and thy foot shall not stumble." He says, keep sound wisdom, and then he says, and discretion. And discretion is exactly what self-control is all about. It's having discretion into what you're going to do. You guys ever heard of discretionary spending? That's that spending that you're allowed to. It's like the splurge money, right? You put this money aside, and this is all you're allowed to splurge on every month if you do a budget. You have some discretionary spending that you're able to kind of do whatever you want with. But then the rest of your budget's kind of locked. And that's what it's talking about, is having discretion. You know, God doesn't want us to not have fun or not spend things or not have good things, but he doesn't want us to go crazy with that stuff because it doesn't matter. It's material. It's not important. It's not something that's going to matter for eternity. And so God tells us that we just have to have discretion or self-control. And that's such an important thing. It's such an important thing. These kids, you notice most of them, they had pretty good self-control, though, on the ones that they're doing well. Now, the ones that were nibbling at it, and having some issues there, sometimes that's us as Christians. We want to dabble into sin. We want to try and have a little bit and stay as close to it as we possibly can without fully consuming it. Well, you know what happens? Eventually you consume it, right? If she had stayed out just a little bit longer, those marshmallows would have been gone for those kids, taking those little nibbles off of it, right? We need to be very careful. The first kid that they show on there, his expressions and things are so hilarious because he's struggling. You can see the struggle in his mind. Right? You can just see the battle going on in his head. He's just like, man, I want to eat this thing. And then as soon as he gets the two, what's he do? Jams them in his mouth because he's been waiting so long. But when you do wait for something, it is much more special. I think I told you guys about when I was a kid, I was super poor. But I wanted a Nintendo system so bad. So I worked hard. I earned enough money for that Nintendo system. And as soon as I got it, I played it for like 24 hours straight. I would not stop playing that thing because I worked hard and I earned that money. I was going to make it worthwhile. My mom's like, oh, you're wasting this money. You're not going to play this thing that often. So I played it for 24 hours straight. I would not go to bed. I just stayed up and played that thing all night long. But then as time went on, guess how much I played it? Less and less and less and less and less and less. Why? Because it wasn't that big of a deal. Now today, kids play more and more video games, right? It's just like keeps going like this. But in my day, like we still actually enjoyed going outside. That was something that was enjoyable to us, right? Today, the kids want to be locked themselves in a basement and play video games all day. The issue with that is that you're not having self-control. You're overindulging in anything. And in Scripture, it talks about that we need to make sure that we don't overindulge. We're supposed to have everything in what? Moderation, right? Do you know the Bible tells us that pretty much everything that you want in life, you can have it in moderation. That's the key. It's about moderation. It's about this discretion. It's about self-control. And that's what God's trying to get us to doing it. Paul talks about this when he says, I enjoy everything, but I don't let anything overtake me, right? He's like, I want to make sure that nothing has more power on me than God. And that's the key. So it's all about discipline. Go back to 1 Corinthians. We saw it already, but here in 1 Corinthians 9, verse 24, this discipline is what he's talking about. He says, in every man, in verse 25, it says, in many man that striveth for the mastery is temperate, or has temperance in all things. Now they do it to obtain a corruptible crown, but we an incorruptible. I therefore so run, not as uncertainly, so fight I, not as one that beateth the air. He's not doing shadow boxing, is what he's saying, right? I'm not playing. It's not a game. It's something that's important. In verse 27, he says, but I keep under my body and bring it into subjection, lest that by any means, when I have preached to others, I myself should be a castaway. When you're a teacher or a preacher, the number one thing that you worry about is being a hypocrite, right? You don't want to be that way. Now, we're all going to fall. We're all going to be, sometimes we're going to do things we don't want to do. That's just the way it is. So if you put your preacher or teacher up here on a pedestal, we're going to fall and we're going to disappoint you every single time. It's going to happen. Teacher or preacher, our number one thing is to say, if I'm preaching about this, I don't want to go make myself a castaway. And last week I told you about some things that happened in my life that God was working me on. And the same thing this week happened, and God brought a situation into my thing, and I handled it well again. And I was so happy. Now, the situation didn't end the way I liked it to. We'll talk about that more if we have time in the end. But the point is God's working on me and changing me. And that's what mattered to me. So even though other people's results weren't the same as that I had the other week when I experienced the same type of outcome, I didn't get that outcome, didn't have them change their attitude, but my attitude stayed in check. And I felt good about that because I know that God is changing me. And that was important for me. And that's what it comes down to, this self-control. And man, I could have lost some self-control in this situation and probably would have been righteous in doing so, but I didn't because God's working in me. And that was a huge thing for me. So we see this temperance defined. So it's about self-control, it's about discretion, it's about discipline. But then we have to see, how is it displayed? How do we see it? In verse 27, it says, but I keep under my body and bring it unto subjection. What's that mean? It means that there's a very detail-oriented, very, how do I say this? But like, it's almost like slavery is what he's talking about here. So when you put somebody in subjection, they're under your control. So if I have somebody that's under my control, he's saying that's what I do to my body. I make sure that it's under my control. It's in subjection to me. I'm not in subjection to my body, but my body is subjection to me. And that's something that's hard. I can tell you that it's hard for me not to have a gallon of ice cream when there's ice cream available, right? I want to eat the whole thing, right? I want to eat it all. I love ice cream. That's the weakness, right? In my house, it's ice cream, like nothing else really there. Chips, they always go bad in my house, always. So if I have a bag of chips in my house, it goes bad because I never eat those. Now I've been getting into microwave popcorn more. My wife kind of got us into that, so I've gotten into that a little bit more. But for the most part, it's ice cream. That's it for me. Everything else can be in my house, and it will stay there forever. Well, tiramisu too. If I have tiramisu in the house, then that's going. But ice cream is my weakness. So if you really want to help me to stumble, buy me ice cream, right? If you don't want to help me to stumble, don't buy me ice cream. But we all have something that we like to indulge in, right? There's something out there that you like to indulge in. So that might be in just reading a book for long periods of time, right? Everything in moderation. If you're reading for hours and hours and hours and hours, that's not a good thing either, right? You can be using better uses of your time. And so we all have something that we want to do. But Paul says, but I keep under my body and bring it into subjection. It says, lest that by any means, when I have preached to others, I myself should be a castaway. We talked about it before. Everybody has somebody looking at you. Everybody's watching you. You don't realize it, you don't see it, and I don't want you to, if you guys have one of those complexes where you're worried that everybody's watching you, there is somebody watching you. It's a guarantee, right? There's somebody seeing your life and seeing what you're doing. But we need to make sure that we're watching what we're doing so that others aren't impacted negatively. And that's what Paul is talking about. So what is temperance displayed? It's having a disciplined physical life, bringing our body into subjection, making sure that we're doing things right. But then it's also having a disciplined speech. Look over at Ephesians 4. Ephesians 4 and verse 25. It says, wherefore, putting away lying, speak every man truth with his neighbor, for we are members one of another. Look at verse 29. It says, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. Man, this is